Who knows why Fabritius painted the Goldfinch at all? A tiny, standalone masterpiece, unique of all its kind. He was young, celebrated. He had important patrons, although unfortunately almost none of the work he did for them survives.
From the future of quantum computing to the literary mind of Donna Tartt. The publication of a Tartt novel is a literary event. Her new book, The Goldfinch, was 10 years in the making. It centers around the 1654 painting by Carel Fabritius of the same name. The painting was recently on view at the Frick Collection in New York City. I spoke with Donna Tartt at the museum for an interview which was in part previously aired on CBS This Morning. Here's a portion of that interview.
And the journey you want us to go after the explosion at the Met, and Theo is charged with saving the Goldfinch, is what?
The journey that I want to take the reader on always is the journey that I loved most when I was reading as a child. Just this galloping, gleeful, you don't know what's going to happen next. And I don't want my books ever to be an amusement park ride that's sort of very predictable, up, down, and you wind around the track and you end up in the same place. I want the car to jump the track. I want the car to be out in the woods somewhere and you don't know where you are and you are wondering where the amusement park is and you don't know how to get back. I want there to be real danger for if there's real danger for the character, there's real danger and surprise for the reader as well. For me, I really feel if there's no surprise for the writer, there's no surprise for the reader. You always have to be writing at the risk point. I always do anyway.
Is danger something that has big meaning to you? The sense of the confrontation with danger?
It's something that I think gives a great sense of liveliness in work and a great sense of fun as well. Reading should be fun.
Reading has been essential to your life.
It has, and continues to be.
I mean, sitting in the library, you read everything you could get your hands on when you were working at the library.
I did. I started working at the library when I was 14.
And you said Dickens went from outside to inside, so it became part of you.
Yes. Well, that's the wonderful thing about books. That's the thing that books can do that no other art form can do. When we read a great book, we do internalize it. It becomes part of us. When we read a great book, we put it down and we're different people. If a great novel will really immeasurably add to our understanding of human character and human nature in a way that's very difficult in real life to have that kind of concentrated experience. You can have it in a novel. You can live many lives by reading books.
Every review I've read compares you and this work to Dickens. Dickens was somebody that was inside of you, as you said. Stephen King, and to name a famous writer.
Who's another writer whose work I
exactly
love,
right.
whose love and have venerated since I was a child.
The best of Dickens here. What is it you think is the connection?
What I love about Dickens so much as a writer is there's no technical problem that Dickens doesn't do well. He's amazing at character. He's amazing at suspense. He's got a fantastic command of metaphor. He's very, very funny. He's a fantastic storyteller. He's wonderful in terms of plot. You can't put his books down. And the thing about Dickens I love so much, there's a warmth about him. He's a great teacher. Many artists really are very opaque and try to hide their effects. Dickens doesn't do that. Dickens lets you in. Dickens, if you're willing to learn from Dickens, he's, come on in, and he shows you how he does it. And it's not just writerly tricks, but Dickens will teach you a lot about life reading him. As I said, the experience of human nature, one's experience of human nature, can be immeasurably enlarged by reading a great novel by Dickens.
As Dickens does, you also ask beyond the thrill of the narrative and beyond the thrill of the adventure and beyond the thrill of the unfolding story. there are also moral questions.
Yes, Dickens is very wise morally. I mean, the novel is really an extended moral play in time. It's a stage in which we can see moral problems played out in real time as we would in a human life, and it really broadens our sense of... In novels, we get to be people from the inside, and we get to understand how people behave the way they do.
So what questions are you grappling with here? What is love? What else?
What is love? What is the good life?
Yeah. What do you mean by that, the good life? And why is that interesting for you?
Well, the idea is that, well, there are many definitions of the good life. Is the good life to be happy oneself? Is it personal happiness? Yeah. Is it making other people happy at the expense of one's own happiness? Is it... I think they're questions that we all have to ask ourselves repeatedly in life. Is it being dutiful? Is it being a good public citizen? Is it loyalty to family? Is it loyalty to work? What is it? What is it for any of us? We all have to work this out on our own. For me, well, I think the two great salvations, love and work. Those are...
You got it.
Yeah, that's...
If you can get love and work, life will be very good to you.
If love and work, then everything else falls into place. I would only add
health to that. If you have love and work and good health, life can be yours.
Exactly.
Have you found both?
Yes.
When you wrote The Secret History, you were what, 22? How old were you?
I started writing it when I was 19, but I didn't publish it until I was 28.
28, okay. So there, 10-year period you were writing that. When it exploded onto the scene, what was that like for you?
It was very disorienting because I wasn't expecting it at all. To write something that long in solitude, having... You have to understand, when you're a writer, there's no one coming in at the end of the day saying, wow, that's a great passage you just wrote. Boy, that's wonderful. So I didn't really know how people were going to respond to it, and I was really quite worried. My friends were all in graduate school and were doing things and had jobs, and I'd really been working in solitude on this book for a long time. I don't know if you remember Mr. Dick and David Copperfield.
Oh, yes.
But he's working on his history, and everyone sort of he's been working on it for many, many years, and everyone talks in sort of hushed tones about it because they don't really believe the history exists. And that was a bit like it was with my family in this book. I think it was all Donna's
So you have 3 novels, and how many years invested in 3 novels?
Well, so it's been 30 years. They've been a decade each.
How many books can you write?
I guess not many if I keep going at this
5 would be
devastatingly
good,
slow pace. 5 would be good. I'd be happy with 5.
Can you become
Smooth
prolific
sailing.
and start just... don't you get faster with effort?
Well, I've tried to write faster, and I don't really enjoy it. I don't enjoy the process of doing that. I've tried to speed up. I thought, well, I'll try to write... It was a mistake. I thought, well, I'll try to write a book in a year, and I just didn't enjoy it at all. It wasn't fun for me, and no fun for the writer, no fun for the reader.
How do you write?
In a very confused way. It's when I first began writing a book, it doesn't look like a book. It's all sorts of disorganized notes all over the place. It's very messy. It's what I start out with notes I've taken in tiny notebooks. I write all the time, and some of these things will suggest something larger. And I have to trust in my subconscious that the things are linked, but I don't know how.
And how do you find out?
You just, at some point you know. If you sit there long enough and that's where the diligence and persistence comes in.
Yeah. Who sees the copy first?
Who sees the copy?
Yeah, who sees who do you show? Do you show it by chapter, by chapter, by chapter when you're writing? Do you have someone that as a first read for you?
I do. And it's important to have, particularly with a book that takes this long to write, with the very difficult heavy lifting in the middle of a novel, you do need someone to tell you the rough truth. I mean, sometimes something will not work, and you need someone to...
So there's someone who says, Donna...
No. It's
Just not. Don't go there.
Don't go there.
Or you're
It's
not there
working.
yet.
Not there yet. Oh, exactly, not there yet. Sometimes that's what it is. You're not there yet. There needs to be a bit more. It's hard. It's hard with anything like that. You can't see it yourself. You always need a second opinion. Even if you're getting dressed sometimes, it's best to ask someone you know.
Well, here's what's interesting about you, too, is that to see you and to know about you, I've just met you, but I was excited about meeting you because you have a persona. It's size, it's the way your hair is, it's the color of your complexion, it's the way you dress. It is a sense of, and then to put that to another place, with Mississippi, and this young woman, young girl, so influenced by literature that it infuses her with dreams of what became your reality.
That's the wonderful thing about books. They give us dreams that do become art. Well, you're from North Carolina, too. We were talking about this earlier about
Southern connections.
The bookmobile coming through.
Right.
And
it
it's
defined my life, the chance that I got in that bookmobile, I'd walk in there as a kid this high, and I would take a book, and that book would transform my aspirations.
Yes.
For what was outside of the world that I lived in, a town of 100 people, and where I could be and where I could go and how I could find a place to stand.
Well, this is what the novel always has to teach us, and it's something that we need to remember in a day of loudly shouting media. Yeah. It was why novels were so loved in the 19th century, because it was the first time people only went maybe 10 miles from their homes in their entire life. And when the first novels came out, people were overjoyed. Robinson Crusoe, you could be on a desert island. You could be with French nobility. And they just enlarged people's experience in such a profound way.
And later with Hemingway, you could be at sea.
You could be at sea, and you could be anywhere. You could be in space.
But it always is the question of life and the reality of life and the struggle of life. I mean, this is what Vanity Fair said about you. She is on intimate terms with the human struggle to craft some kind of meaning, some kind of beauty, from the brutal inevitability of death. Does that resonate with you?
I think that resonates with every artist. I think every artist, every painter that we saw downstairs today in the Frick felt exactly the same way.
Meaning I have to create because in the end there is the inevitability of death?
Meaning that art is a still point, a small oasis that gives us a respite from death. It's a bit of eternity. It's a quiet breathing space where death doesn't exist.
Has the writer's life lived up to your hopes, dreams, expectations?
To my wildest dreams.
Really?
Yes.
More, bigger, larger,
better,
finer
happier.
than you dreamed?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what does that mean? What is the writer's life that is so satisfying for you?
Well, to be able to daydream all day, to be able to, writing a book is one level deeper than reading a book. As much fun as it is to read a book, writing a book is one level deeper than that. So it's really fun. It's hard at times, it's hard going, but when it's good and when it's going well, there's nothing like it.
When you look ahead now, I mean, take this character, the journey, you want readers to walk away from this book, The Goldfinch, and feel what? And experience what? And say what?
Well, first of all, I want them to have had some of the experience of happiness that I had while I was writing it. I want to, first and foremost, it should be fun. I want it to be a fun adventure, yes. But there are also philosophical questions in this book, big questions, and things that that's something that a novel is actually very good at doing that no other art form is quite as good as doing as the novel, is treating big questions about life, like the ones we were just talking about, in a very kind of light as air way. You don't, in not a dry way. You're infused with a certain way of being and a certain way of seeing things very effortlessly.
Exactly right. It's not pedantic, it's not lecturing, it's basically experiencing gets you there.
Yes, it's experiential.
Back to your personality. Here you go. This is The Guardian 20 years ago. about you. I love this, actually. She was a hard-drinking Southerner who lived alone with her cockatiel and her pug. She bought her clothes from Gap Kids, yet she could recite great swaths of poetry and even short stories by heart. T.S. Eliot and Edgar Allan Poe, mostly. She was a Catholic convert, apparently sworn to celibacy, with a taste for repressed Gothic ghost stories. Was that you?
People write what they want to write.
Yeah. But are you flattered by that, or are you taken back by that?
Well, it's always interesting to see...
Hard-drinking Southern.
Well, it's always interesting to see yourself the way that other people see you. It's interesting...
But what is true about this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, what is true about this is that you can, recite great swaths of poetry and passages from great literature because they meant something to you and they
really
buried
did.
deep inside of you.
They did. And when I was a child, I used to copy out things again and again and again, which is how I did memorize things and commit them to...
by copying them.
By copying them down. And it's wonderful. Even now, if I'm in the doctor's office waiting to see the doctor and I'm bored, I'll recite Sailing to Byzantium to myself.
Or recite it to me.
That is no country for old men. The young in one another's arms, the birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song. The salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas. Something, something, commend all summer long, whatever is begotten, born, and dies. Caught in that sensual music, all neglect, monuments of unaging intellect. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing for every tatter in its mortal dress. And there is no singing school save studying monuments of its own magnificence, and therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium.
My God, that's good. It's good. It's really good.
Even though I forgot the line.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. You got the 90% of it. But there's also about you, and we've become enchanted with the persona of people who touch us by their art, whether it's Picasso painting or you writing a novel or other people on stage, for example. Do you like the mystery about you? That she's this reclusive character who writes these novels and has this amazing ability to bring together in her characters danger, historical reference, all of that.
What's important for me as a writer really is solitude. A lot of it's not so much reclusiveness as just a need to be alone when I work. A friend of mine called me a hermit about town, and which is, because I'm not really reclusive at all. It's just that when I am working, I do need to spend a lot of time alone, and it requires a life spent at one's desk is a life alone.
And it is not easy. Writing is not easy.
No, it's not easy. Nothing worthwhile is easy.
What was for this book? Was there a moment in the process of this that made you say, "I've got it. I know"? Was it the opening scene? Was it a character? Was it the painting?
I think it was oddly that trip to Las Vegas, which made me see all sorts of things about fate and chance and gambling, and about the movement of money in relation to art, and about dirty money in relation to art, because wherever there's been art, there's always been dirty money around it. It was Las Vegas that made it come together.
What do you mean by dirty money?
I mean that paintings are sold, traded in all sorts of dodgy, shady ways.
You don't know where the money comes from. You don't know what happens to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't know the provenance. Sometimes you don't ask too many questions.
Are you a collector at all?
I am not a collector. I wouldn't call myself a collector, but I have some paintings that I like and that I'm very fond of.
So when you're on this farm in Virginia, what's the role of Punch?
The role of Punch is my constant companion. Punch
there at every moment.
He is always there, and he always comes and reminds me when it's time to go have lunch. He'll come in and tell me.
Or to go out.
When it's time to go out. But he does. He comes in very, very...
it's comforting to have that presence.
Absolutely. And I have a cat, too, Sadie, who spends a lot of time with me.
Well, how does Sadie and Punch get along?
Sadie is a bit scared of him because she's a lot bigger than he is.
Is that right?
Yes. She's tough. She's a tough lady.
It often happens. The interesting thing you said to me that I've read that you have said, which I didn't quite understand, when you talked about density and speed. You said, I think, that you look for density and speed. What does that mean?
Well, with a big book like mine, you're building a really big, heavy article, but you want it to go fast. You want the reader's experience of it to be fast. And you want there to be detail in it. You want to see the quality of the shadows, the paintings on the walls, the tone of people's voice. You want to give the illusion of reality, which is density. So you're packing a lot of information in there, but you want it to go fast at the same time.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. When you edit much yourself?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you get to the end before you and then go back, or do you sort of have to shape and make sure that every chapter is just where you want it to be before you can leave it?
It's both, and sometimes a chapter will be just where I want to be before I leave it, and then I'll realize I must go back and change it. But the writer Ann Patchett has a wonderful metaphor for it, which is writing a book is, when you fold egg whites into a souffle. You have your story, but you keep sort of folding more information into it to sort of bring it up to where it needs to be. Sometimes the consistency's not right, and you need to kind of lift it up a bit. It's a very good metaphor for the process.
What is it about having protagonists or having teenagers as protagonists?
Well, there's a great sense of possibility and fun. They're coming into contact with the world for the first time. They're figuring out themselves. They're figuring out their relationship to the world. And the reader gets to figure that out along with them.
Frequently people will ask this question about novelists. If it's a female novelist, they'll say, how did you find the voice for a male protagonist? Here you have a teenager protagonist who happens to be a young boy. Was the voice there at all? Did you have to search for it, or did
the voice was
it?
Actually always there for me, right from the beginning. I was actually a mimic when I was a child. I had a real gift for mimicking my teachers, which was much admired in school. That's a good gift to have as a child.
By fellow students or by the teacher?
Not by the teacher, not by the teacher, but by other students. And I am able to pick up other people's voices very easily, and it's a skill that stood me in good stead as a writer.
I've often believed that was an indication of superior intelligence myself. I do.
Really?
I really do. I mean, and it's like perfect pitch, or it's like, the capacity to hear well. This is I think about 800 pages. How much is it?
It's about 800 pages. It's about 800 pages.
Is that a normal length for you?
It is about, yes.
Yeah.
I seem to write it this length.
It takes you about 800 pages to tell a story.
There's several stories. This is really this is the story of an entire life, and it's told in 3 parts. So you're going on a 10 years journey here.
When you were at Bennington, you knew there was nothing you could possibly do in life but write.
Actually, for a while, I wanted to be a painter.
Ah, this comes full circle, doesn't it?
I know. For a while, I wanted to be a painter, but I wasn't good enough. I also wanted to be a classical scholar, but I wasn't good enough at that either. So it's good I was able to write. That was.
Oh, you actually thought of being a classical scholar, and yeah. But I don't want to think of writing as a second choice for you.
It wasn't a second choice.
In other words, writing was where you belonged. You just had to get there.
It was where I belonged, and I had to get there, exactly. I didn't really discover myself as a writer until I started writing a novel, because writing short stories wasn't quite right for me, and I knew it wasn't.
800 pages was your length.
I know, exactly. Once I started writing a novel, I thought,
this
is it. This is my form. This is what I do.